Good morning, everyone. This is Tony from Her Homestead Skills, and welcome to my channel. This morning I'm back in the kitchen. I did manage to find a couple of packages of chicken carcasses, so I am in the process of making stock. There were 3 packages. I left one for somebody else and took 2 myself. So as you can see here, 2 pots on the stove. Actually, this one I already made, and I made it yesterday, and I've strained it, so this is going to go into the fridge until the second pot is done. I could have done both of them in one shot, but I do like to simmer them for hours and hours and hours, so I don't like to take up all the burners. And this one is simmering very gently, as you can see, and we have some more chicken stock happening there. Now, the reason I decided to do both at once is so that I could can them both at the same time. These net me approximately 9 pint jars. So that should be able to fit into the canner in one run. And if there's an extra jar or 2, that can go in the fridge, and Mark can have them before they are canned up. So, and yes, I also bought a big package of ground beef in order to make another batch of chili. And chili is one of those items that I can make and put in my pantry, and it is something that we will eat. And I always suggest to people that don't make foods that nobody in your home is going to eat. So make sure that it is something that is not going to sit there and then 2 years, 3 years down the road you throw it out. So we have been eating chili, and that is one of those foods that, especially this time of year, seems to go quickly, either with rice or with toast, or the last time I think we had it with the corn sticks that I made, the cornbread sticks. Yeah, and they were nice. So I'm going to make another huge batch of chili as well, but today I'm going to concentrate on my chicken stock and my meatball stash, and perhaps start the chili. And I will obviously be doing a big batch of canning when all this food is prepared. Okay, and those of you that have seen me make these meatballs before know that what I do is I do make a big batch of meatballs, well, a reasonable size, not huge, but I make them up and then I freeze them, and then we take out as many as what we need for the meal. And my ingredients are ground pork, and you could use ground pork, you can use ground beef, you can use a mixture of the two. Recently I've just been using ground pork on its own. Couple of eggs. Now that would also depend on how many pounds of ground pork. Some salt, some parsley, and I do add some Parmesan cheese for extra flavor, and of course some breadcrumbs to make them a little firmer, so that you can, to add some bulk so that you can make the meatballs nice. Now, if you're going to can your meatballs, which I have done in the past, but we can whip out a meatball dinner, pasta and meatball dinner pretty quickly around here, so I don't bother to can them, but I do prepare them ahead of time. But if you do plan to can your meatballs, do not add breadcrumbs. I don't really love to get my hands in meat, so I'm going to use my mixer for this and start off with a couple of eggs. And in this case I'm going to add, a heaping teaspoon of salt. And I'd rather go light on the salt and add it afterwards when I'm cooking. If I want more, I'll add it in the sauce, but I do want some with the meat. And parsley, I can go heavy on the parsley, I always do. Oh yeah, the other item that I forgot, and I better not forget, is chopped up onions. So I'm going to chop up some onions to go in this as well. So, and some Parmesan cheese, once again. Just a nice heaping amount. That's probably about 2 tablespoons worth there. And I've got 2 pounds of ground pork here. Now, sometimes I do larger quantities than this, but I felt that this would be enough for the time being. And the breadcrumbs are to, right now I'm just going to start off with about 2 cups worth. Okay, I'm going to go and chop an onion and then I'll be right back. Okay, well I've got my chopped onion and it's going in there as well. And that's just a medium-sized onion. And now I'm going to use my mixer and let it do the work for me. And about 2 pounds of meat is all that I'd want to put in this mixer at one time. And if I buy more than 2 pounds, I usually split it into 2 sections to do this. Okay, let's bring this forward. Okay. Okay, and once you've got it good and mixed up, obviously, you take it out. And then we're just going to form our meatballs, and I do have some of my plastic cutting boards ready to place them on so that they can just go directly in the freezer. And this is definitely not my favorite task. I really don't like putting my hands in meat, but we don't always get to do everything we like. Okay, and I've got 2 cutting boards here in case I need more than one. And that does appear to be the right consistency. I didn't even bother to check and see if it needed more breadcrumbs, but you don't want to make it too stiff. You just want enough for everything the meatball to hold together. And you could make them small or you can make them large, whatever you like. I tend to go to the average, a medium-sized. And Mark and I find that we cook about 8 of them. And if we don't eat all of them for dinner, he tends to have some of them as a snack at some point. So, yes, this is a job that you have to do when you make meatballs. Now, the reason I've got into doing this is rather than mixing them up individually each time I want meatballs, I found that it's a lot more convenient just to have them ready in the freezer when I want them. Now, just a heads up, you cannot use pre-frozen meat. It has to be fresh before it's gone in the freezer. So if you buy your meat and you don't do it right away, put it in the fridge for a day and then do it the next day. But do not freeze it and then thaw it and then refreeze. You cannot refreeze meat. You can refreeze bread, and I do that all the time, but not meat. Okay. I don't know how many of these make. They're not exactly small, so we'll just make them until they're done though. And I line them up like this single file so that when I vacuum seal them to put them in the freezer, if I freeze them first, then they don't stick together. I can get them apart and just use how many I want. And frozen, they don't squash down. They stay whole if you freeze them first. If you try to vacuum seal them before you freeze them, they will turn to mush and they will no longer be meatballs. So now we'll have enough for a few meals here. It's still more convenient to do for a few meals rather than just each time you want them. Okay, so I should be able to get these done today as well as my chicken stock, although I suspect that I will be canning up my chicken stock tomorrow rather than today. Let the second pot simmer overnight. Okay, I have 32 meatballs, and if we use 8 at a time for dinner. That's 3 times, that's 4 dinners and 3 times that I don't have to do this job. So they're going in the freezer now to freeze solid. Once they're frozen solid, I'll take them out and vacuum seal them. Okay, to start my chili. I think I will start my chili today. And we do use kidney beans. You can use pinto beans, and these were just handy, so I pulled these out first. This is the one time that I use my Instapot. It cooks the beans a lot faster. I do not use canned beans for chili because they're already way too soft. And the one thing I learned about making chili that you want to put in your pantry is that you undercook things. I mean, you do cook everything, but you just don't cook it for hours and hours, because when you can it up, you're cooking it still. So you have to allow for that cooking time in the canner as well. And what I like to do is just make sure all the meat is browned. The beans are mostly cooked. They're still a little bit firm. And mix everything up. Put all my spices in, put the tomatoes in, and yes, everything's cooked, it's just not totally cooked. So it's slightly undercooked. So I'm going to start off with, okay, I have 3 pounds of ground beef, and I believe I would want 6 cans of beans. So 2 cans of beans for every pound of ground beef, I believe. But you know what I'm going to do? That's how much I'll make, and if I don't use them all, that's fine. So normally, when I do a pint jar, which should be equal to a can, I use a half cup of beans. So I want 6 of these. Cool. It's almost that whole jar. And as I said, I may not, well, you know what? I'm going to dump the whole jar in. And I may not use all the beans in the chili. I'll just put in what I feel is an adequate amount when I go to cook it. Now I'm going to wash these. And the instructions for my Instapot say to cook red kidney beans dry for 20 to 25 minutes. So I'm going to wash them and I'm going to cook them for 25 minutes because I know they don't cook in 25 minutes. I've done this before, and if I do set it for 25 minutes, they will still be somewhat raw, which is fine. That's exactly the way I want them. So I'm going to go and rinse these now. I have washed my beans thoroughly and I have filled it up with water to the halfway mark. 3/4 is the maximum that I can fill with this Instapot, and it's just the basic Instapot. It's not one of the elaborate ones. So I will set it to cook for 25 minutes, and then I will pull out all the other ingredients that I'm going to use for my chili. Okay, and I've pulled out all the ingredients that I'm going to need, I believe. So I've got my last 3-quart jars of tomato puree, and I will use those first, but certainly have many pint jars should I need more. And yeah, I just want to finish off the quart jars first. My 3 pounds of ground beef, which is frozen, but I'm going to brown that before we go any further. But before that, we also want to chop up some onions and brown those. And we also want to chop up some green peppers and put that in as well. For spices, I have cumin, and I believe one or the other, probably the extra hot chili pepper, and I'm going to have to be very cautious with that. The last time I put a little too much for me, or the cayenne, and I believe Mark says you don't put both, just one or the other. So I'm going to let him spice it because he is thoughtful enough not to make it too hot for me, and of course some salt. I don't think I forgot anything, but if I did, I'll add to it. So I am going to start to prepare. I'm going to thaw out the beef and start my chili, and perhaps can it tomorrow. Anyway, this is Tony from Her Homestead Skills. Hope you found this one informative and enjoyed it, and we'll catch you on the next one. Bye for now.